Good afternoon, everyone. Just to give you guys a little spin on from the maritime sector of critical infrastructure. So I've been just came out of 14 years in oil and gas offshore exploration. Was a chief electrician on a drill ship for many years, and have shifted my focus from the oil and gas piece of it into the actual maritime sector. So we're covering multiple varieties of vessels and even to the ports and terminals. The company that I'm working for is actually Moran Shipping. So the Moran Cyber piece is a division of Moran Shipping Agencies. That is a family-owned company that's been in business 82 years. We've got offices, major offices in both Providence, Rhode Island, and Houston, Texas. I'm based in the Houston office. If anybody's not aware of the ship agent role, with the maritime sectors, they facilitate the free flow of commerce. So we actually represent vessel owners and coordinate their vessels to move in and out of the ports all around the U.S. We are the largest independent ship agency in North America, with, again, 18 offices, the major offices being in those two cities, and 16 minor offices located all along the East Coast, Gulf Coast, West Coast. We currently, for last year, handled over 5,000 vessels coming in and out of the ports. So while we're playing that role of brokering those vessels in and out of the ports, we actually become a stakeholder in those vessels, which puts us at risk for anything that could happen to those vessels while they're coming in and out, which is where the cyber piece was spun up internally within Moran to address the ships themselves and identify any vulnerabilities to the ship owners. Just over $1 billion a year on the agency side. And again, a significant role in the security of the ports, because we're actually exchanging information between the ships and the ports. So the IT piece of that business has become very robust over the last 20 years because of the data that's being exchanged between the vessels and the ports. The actual ecosystem of the data that we're receiving on the agency side, again, is between the ship owners, Homeland Security for Customs and Border Patrol or protection, Coast Guard, again, charters, vessels, everything up on the list. So we're this constant flow of data between all those vessels, and it's routing through Moran. So some of the risks that we're seeing. From a global bit, everybody's interconnected, obviously, at these days. So there's huge targets of information that are out there that everybody's real anxious to get their hands on. If you could, figure out what containers are heading into what ports and what the cargo is, that's becomes real attractive to some people. The agents that we have are, again, highly mobile. They're boarding those ships, spending time on them while they're in port. So they're connecting to the ships and sharing that information across different ecosystems. So a few known incidents. Again, some good fictitious scheduling to try to spoof people into believing certain ships are heading in certain directions or certain cargo. So that has occurred on many occasions. Ransomware, obviously, is a huge concern. A lot of the ships will actually exchange information with the ports or the terminals via USB drives. So there's usually a rampant amount of things that are shared between the terminals and the ships themselves via portable devices. Email spoofing and spear phishing of executives. For such a small company that I work for, it's actually impressive the number of spoofed emails that we get from our CEO, sent to our accounting department, which luckily is a small group of fine young ladies that, hey, I'm in a meeting, I need 10 iTunes gift cards, just run and grab them for me and send me the numbers, I need them immediately. Signed Jim Black, our CEO. So it's I guess the nice piece with a smaller company is they know they can simply pick the phone up and call him and say, hey, is this you? And so far he has not ordered any iTunes cards. So some of the future concerns. So we're talking about this digital transformation, which is fantastic. I love modernizing everything, and I love data and information. But from a security standpoint, it's just a huge amount of work for what we do on the cyber side. Everybody's showing up and wants to connect into these systems on the ships to gather all this fantastic data and make things more efficient and save money, increase revenue. But normally, up until the last year or two, nobody's been concerned with security. So it's been a mad dash to plug everything in with no concerns of how secure those systems are, or if there's any security even in those. And again, the artificial intelligence piece, I'm not sure if anybody follows any of the maritime news, but there's been a lot of stories on autonomous vessels, traversing the globe with nobody on them. Guys sitting back in an office somewhere just steering away and looking at screens, and we'll move these mammoth vehicles all around the globe with nobody actually physically on the vessels. So. And again, cyber as a weapon to damage economies. So imagine if you could take control of one of these container ships or even tankers, loaded with oil or any varieties of oils, or even bulk cargo, and either send them to the bottom of the ocean or just drive them into a dock somewhere and shut down a major terminal for X amount of time. The impacts that would have to the economy. So we're pushing a much greater need to trust but verify. Again, if you can trust the vendors that you're bringing on to pull all this data out of those systems and verify what they're doing with it, where it's going, how they're securing it, is a crucial step from the maritime sector. I think we've seen enough of these today with all the pretty colors and circles. Every session I've sat in since Monday, I think, has had at least some variety of this. But again, just those where everything's crossing from the physical and environmental into the IoT, OT, IT. I guess the safety aspect for me, and I had mentioned it Monday during our the discussion we had, the panel. I take, it's a passion for me to keep these vessels safe because I've lived on these vessels. These were my home for many years, for days and weeks and months at a time. So any incident that it would affect the vessel, affects where I live. And the last thing I want is for something bad to happen and end up in the water. So again, it's a passion of mine to do everything possible to secure these systems and keep the vessels safe. And in the oil and gas industry, it was always keep the pointy end up. The last thing you wanted was the pointy end facing down and going south. So just a quick glance at the number of ships. This always amazes me as I pull up these latest and greatest tables of the types of ships that are out. This was actually some 2017 numbers. Again, they're just class small, medium, large, very large. And if as you see, just an overall total down in the corner there of over 90,000 vessels that are out on the waterways today. So maritime industrial control systems. Of course, years ago, all these navigation people on the bridge had paper charts. They'd actually go out on the deck with a compass and look at the stars, and they could judge where they were at and where they were going, speeds and directions and all of that. This is actually a photo off of a modern navigation bridge, which is just fully electronic. A lot of the ships don't even carry paper charts on them anymore. I was on a brand new container ship in the port of Oakland back in December. It was 2 weeks old, had made one trip to Hawaii and back to California. So fully electronic. And in the corner there was a stack of paper charts. And when I asked why do you have paper charts, and the captain said, I love electronics, but I was trained to use paper charts. So when all this stuff stops functioning all of a sudden, I can still pull out my paper charts and figure out what's going on and where we are. So I guess it's some old school lessons of critical backups. This guy was ready, which was good to see. We have seen instances of some of these radar systems going, blacking out. One instance was as they were passing through a channel, and of course the younger crew was just terrified. They were, arms in the air. What are we going to do? What do we do? We don't know where we're at. And somebody finally had to say, hey, just look up and look out the windows. Hey, you can see the shore on each side of us, so we can fairly easily navigate if you just use your senses that are not electronic. So we're becoming heavily reliant on the electronic side of navigation. And again, the engine control rooms, same thing. Almost everything is, as you can see from this photo, is on a computer screen. Displays, user interfaces, everything is digitalized. There may still be one or two actual physical gauges on that you can tap and make sure that the values are correct, but 95% of everything in those engine rooms now is electronic. Even down to the engine controls themselves. So for years, we could run diesel engines on board. They were mechanically controlled and would run whether the computer systems were up or not. That new cargo ship I was on in December, if the computers go down, the engines don't run. All fuel injected for emissions, everything monitored. And if there was an issue with the actual brain of the engine, then there was no way to manually run that engine anymore. Oh, wait, I didn't even mention remote access. I know we talked about it the other day, though. Again, since everything is digitalized and connected, everybody, the vendors are offering services to have access into those systems to help you troubleshoot, help, increase uptime, efficiencies. But again, a lot of companies don't even have any idea if the vendors are in the systems or out of the systems, if they've made changes or any of that. So the remote access is a huge safety concern. Skipping over to containerized ports, I just picked this the container ports as a single topic. We could talk for days and weeks if we wanted to go from bulk liquid transfer facilities to every kind of different piece in the shipping realm. But I use containerized ports. We've been doing a lot of work in the ports here in the last 6 months, and it's to me it's terrifying the things that we found from a security standpoint. Just some useless information for you. 90%, roughly 90% of the world's goods are transported by sea, with over 70% as containerized cargo. So these containers are, moving everything that we're sitting on and touching and everything you can imagine, moving through the ports. Again, the cargo represents about 2/3 of the value of total global trade. So a little more than $4 trillion worth of goods every year moving through these containers. Again, so if you can imagine the implications of an attack or even a malicious insider causing any type of disruption within one of these terminals in the U.S., the effect that it would have on the actual economy and trade. Just real quick, top 10 ports in the U.S. These were 2017, mid 2018 numbers, but the numbers in the millions are the actual 20-foot equivalent units or containers. So you can see the Port of Los Angeles at 8.5 million containers a year, all the way down to the Port Everglades, just over 1 million containers per year, with about 41 million total just moving around these 10 particular ports in the U.S. annually. This photo is actually from a brand new container crane that I was on back in October. It was being commissioned the day I was there. Had every new piece of equipment you could imagine in it, from the drive systems, the PLCs, the switches. Very, very high tech, highly automated. Every single device in there was set with default credentials. So again, things that keep me up at night. But yeah, I could sit on my phone, Google a switch that was within the OT's network, pull the default credentials in there and put them in my laptop as I was plugged into an open port on the switch, and straight into the user interface for that device. So just so I guess to me there's a huge disconnect between the device manufacturers are doing a great job adding security features into the devices themselves, but the manufacturers of the larger equipment are just taking the stuff out of the box, installing it, and selling a $20 million crane to a customer, and fantastic, here you go, it's all yours. This particular unit even had a little push button inside that said VPN on that you could push, and it would actually connect it back to the manufacturer. So, scary stuff. Again, and everything in this crane is networked, all the way down to the GPS signals so it won't collide with other cranes that are running on the same track, and also the straddle carriers that are actually receiving the containers as it's unloading them. So everything is on a GPS, beautiful GPS screen of the entire yard. You can see everything moving, but you can imagine with the ease of just spoofing a little bit of the GPS signals, what kind of collisions you could create even between the cranes and the ships, or even the straddle carriers that are moving equipment. Just an overview of one of those yards. Again, and part of the issue within these particular yards is a lot of wireless devices, a lot of very lax security on wireless devices, even down to the gate systems that allow the trucks in and out of the ports that were fairly easy to access. Here's the third-party piece once more. So if you can imagine, hey, we need you to help us troubleshoot this crane from maybe Ireland or some other country. The access is there, and wasn't no real control over who was in or out. Another large critical vulnerability we found was within software in the actual operating systems in these terminals. Just terrible vulnerabilities that were built into the software that some of the vendors didn't seem real anxious to fix, even when it was brought to their attention, unless the customer wanted to pay to fix the vulnerabilities that were built into their software to begin with. So that's about it for me. Little quote from being a sailor: leave nothing to chance. Keep those paper charts handy just in case. But again, the safety for us is paramount to keeping that pointy end up on the ships and not waking up with your feet underwater. It's a bad feeling. That's it.